I'd say that some companies, perhaps jump into the next stage that we're going to talk about without having done the two stages prior. So if we're thinking about sort of getting our 100 customers, then we're kind of getting onto the, if you like, the juicy bit, which is sort of getting into actually activating some of these channels. So from that perspective, then, how then do we decide, okay, we've done our jobs to be done bit, we've done our go-to-market planning, the strategy sort of stuff. We're going to then start to think about what channels to use then. How do you think people should be thinking about that then to make sure we're actually going to deliver some customers in?
Yeah, I love this question because it's definitely one of those cart before horse situations. A lot of people, they start their go-to-market and like their growth or early stage process with channels first. But the irony with that is there's no amount of like article reading or Googling that you can do that's going to tell you like exactly what your customers, like what channels that they're going to hang out in. That's actually only partially true. There's definitely some Googling that you could do, but you really don't know until you actually talk to them. So if you get to the stage where you're like, okay, I'm ready to start thinking about marketing channels and also growth channels, I'm going to include that in there too. But if you're ready to think about marketing channels, if you've done your research, this stage actually shouldn't be shocking at all to you. It should be something that you actually already know because you've done your research. Typically what happens is companies will get to this like channel definition stage where they're like, okay, like what channels do we actually invest in? And they have no idea because they actually haven't done the research. So it's like, okay. But assuming that you've done your research and you've done it well, you should ideally know what channels to be thinking about. I'm going to give you some examples, but this includes like paid acquisition, SEO. Content marketing is technically a practice, and the channels through which content marketing come through are going to be like Google search, or it's going to be like referral traffic or what have you. But you can think of content marketing at least as like a marketing practice. Some people do consider it to be a channel, but there's also email, there's conferences, there's, every single way that you can acquire a customer can technically be considered a channel, if not a practice itself. Some folks think about like demand generation, account-based marketing as being channels / practices. But yes, like there's a ton of ideas. TikTok is a channel, like all of the things, right? But the list of marketing channels is endless and overwhelming, and it changes. Some change very frequently. So social media, like, TikTok wasn't a thing 2 years ago, and now it's very much a thing. But then there's also things that don't change as widely. So yes, there are other search engines, but Google is like the 90% shareholder, I think, of all search traffic. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. But Google is the big the giant SEO / search engine provider in the on the internet today. And there aren't very many new entrants into that market, so that doesn't really change a whole lot. But as you can imagine, there's all kinds of ebb and flow between the different types of channels. But if you've done your research, and what I mean by that is you've talked to prospects, ideal prospects, if not actual paying customers, because you might have a few paying customers. And your questions that you're going to ask them are going to be, when you're online or offline, where do you hang out? When you want to learn more about your industry, when you want to learn more about your job, when you want to learn more about blah, 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 like you're going to ask them, where do you go? Where do you hang out? And you're going to prompt them, and you're going to ask them like, do you go to conferences? Do you read blogs? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you watch webinars? Like what do you consume, if anything? Because they might not consume anything at all. It's possible. We're just going to ask them like where they hang out. And then you're also going to ask them like where they spend their time outside of work, online, wherever that is. And you're going to find that there's certainly trends, but you'll also discover that there's going to be patterns in what most people discuss from a behavioral perspective, things like searching or being on LinkedIn or being on Facebook. But then you're also going to do your own research outside of talking to customers and prospects. And you're going to use tools like SparkToro, BuzzSumo, and Ahrefs or Moz, et cetera. And you're going to use that to also identify where your audience most likely hangs out, and also what they're most likely searching, et cetera. You're going to look for other influencers. You're going to look for people who influence your space. These are also going to give you channel ideas.